Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to another episode of Mildly Interesting. However, this is not any ordinary episode. This is our follow-up to the Russian invasion of Ukraine special. If you like what we do, follow us on Spotify, subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter and Instagram to keep updated. Go to mildly-interesting.co.uk where we post articles sometimes. Without further ado, I'm Akash Lush.
And I'm Jules Hunt.
And this is Mildly Interesting.
Mildly interesting. No, seriously, just mildly interesting.
Last time we covered this story, Russia was making steady advances into Ukraine's largest cities. And today, well, not much has really changed on that part. Putin's forces are still trying to get into some bravely defended cities and towns, oftentimes engaging in a grueling, long-lasting standoff. And I think that is really a warfare in Russia at its core. They encircle the target as they did in Syria, and bomb them from afar, slowly sort of chipping away at resources and causing hundreds and thousands of civilian deaths in the process. We can see this perhaps strikingly in the city of Mariupol, where Putin's troops have completely encircled the city and the military is constantly bombing a city already in ruins, and despite the fact that the Ukrainians are doing their best to keep the Russians from advancing, the progress by the Russians is slow but steady. Meanwhile, in Russia, Putin continues to censor any negative image of the invasion, using shows of force wherever he can, either by jailing and torturing protesters, or by attacking the opposition, like he did to Navalny by trying him in a makeshift trial comprised of Putin's goons, and sending him to a maximum security prison where he'll be with those that tried to poison him in the first place. It's essentially a death sentence for Navalny. So, Akash, what else is new on this topic since the last time we've covered it?
It seems like Russia and Ukraine are actually finally engaging in, we won't call it peace talks, but ceasefire talks at least. Zelensky has offered Ukrainian neutrality at the table, possibly accepting to not join NATO, while at the same time Putin seems to have given concessions to let Ukraine join the EU as like an economic partner. So it seems that both sides are ready to give a little to get some, basically, to anything to end this fight. But it does seem like, since the last time we talked, the situation in Ukraine is not as one-sided as we thought. Yes, the Russians are near Kiev, but the Ukrainian military has been able to push them back in one of the towns northeast of Kiev. In fact, there is quite heavy Ukrainian resistance, and their counteroffensives have made it so that Russia is actually, according to intelligence services, hiring 1,000 mercenaries and pulling up its reserves to push more into Ukraine.
It seems as though the Ukrainians are fighting back harder, way harder than expected. Do you think that these efforts will make it so that Putin reconsiders the invasion of Ukraine, or like reconsiders perhaps taking his troops back from Ukraine? Because we've seen that despite the fact that Putin has said that he will shift the focus of the invasion from Kiev to the Donbass region, the forces in Kiev have not gone away. So they're still there and they're still bombing the city. And, you know, what I worry about is that this is going to be just a long-lasting conflict, something that kind of stays in a gray zone for quite a bit, which obviously is not good for Putin because of the sanctions that will keep happening as it goes. But it's also not good for Ukraine, obviously because of the humanitarian crisis, but also because, well, as it is, Ukraine is going to feel the damages for the next decade, 2 decades already. So do you think that Putin is preparing for like a more long-lasting conflict, or is he preparing to withdraw? And if so, is this a defeat for Putin?
I don't know if Putin realizes it, but the longer this war goes on, the more danger he's in. We've seen that the sanctions have cut him off not only from like his, from the West, but it's pretty much isolated him from his biggest allies. China is refusing to outright help them. We've talked about this in a previous episode. They haven't condemned Russia's invasion, but at the same time, they are now slowly reducing their investment in Russian projects due to the sanctions and their own economy. Just response from all over the world sanction Russia and aid Ukraine's fight against Russia. It does seem like this is a war that Putin cannot win. Whether he realizes that or not, I am not entirely sure. My best guess is that he is trying his best to save face, and he's going to keep fighting until he has something to show from it. I believe in a statement by the Kremlin, or at least one of its representatives, it sort of blasted NATO for trying to put it in a corner, saying that they've seen NATO's advances into Eastern Europe. They feel, I guess comparing themselves to like a cornered animal, they're lashing out because they feel threatened. I think Putin wants something from this war, essentially, and he's going to keep fighting until he has reassurance that that's what he's going to get out of it. But like I said, long term, it's not good for him. Like, his governance and his citizens are suffering because of these sanctions, and if these ceasefire talks do not work out well, I do feel like both sides are being chipped away at. Their resistance is like being worn out. The difference is going to be Zelensky comes out the same, if not a stronger looking leader, and Putin comes out as, it's no secret, but the warmongering dictator he is. And I think Biden said it the other day, and he didn't really retract his statement. He just said it was like more of a personal statement than American policy. But I think a lot of people agree with him that Putin cannot stay in power. Either his presidency ends through protest and public uproar, or his regime slowly collapses due to no one wanting him in power.
That analogy of the cornered animal is very good because, what does a cornered animal do when pressured? Well, they attack. And this might just be the perfect analogy for this war, because the UN and the US and international countries, international forces will continue to sort of chokehold Russia until it gives up. The problem is that Putin is not known for giving up. He likes to be in active conflict. He's been in active conflicts for decades now. Even still, I am hopeful for the peace talks. There have been concessions from both sides already, so it's on that side it's good news, despite the fact that most political commentators and most experts in the field still have low expectations for this. And I must say that I do have low expectations for this, but I guess this episode I'm taking more of a hopeful stance than last episodes. Before we end, I just want to ask you, how do you think it's going to go from here?
Because of the concessions that are given, a ceasefire may be in both parties' best interests for Ukraine to lick it. Because essentially, I don't think Putin wants peace. Like you said, he's not known for giving up. But I feel like a ceasefire, he would see it as a strategic means to regroup and rethink his attack, while Ukraine uses it to, sort of lick its wounds and prepare for the next offensive. So I do believe that maybe a ceasefire is somewhere in the future. But it's interesting to look at these talks. They're being hosted in Turkey by Erdogan, who has always had a special kind of friendship with Russia, while also maintaining a good relationship with the EU and the West. So while Erdogan is his own strongman kind of ruler, a whole nother bag of bolts to get into, the fact that Turkey is sort of the middleman for these negotiations is quite apt. I do like the news coming out of the talks, I was talking about this with Santos before the episode started, but Roman Abramovich, the I think former manager or current manager of Chelsea, I'm not quite sure. Former manager. He's a Russian oligarch and he's got ties to the Kremlin or whatever. I don't know. I'm sure he's an important man in Russia, but to us English people, we just know him as the former manager of Chelsea. So it's kind of just funny that a football manager is just in the middle of like the peace talks for potentially World War III, and he's making like big decisions on behalf of Russia. I don't know. It's just kind of humorous to me. But yes, there were rumors of him being poisoned. Again, it's so weird the information coming out of here because Russia has banned like social media and has gone full censorship mode, but on a government Telegram post, they did show a picture of Roman Abramovich, very healthy and smiley. So he has not been poisoned, and he is still heading the talks. But yeah, it's. I guess there's to sum it up. I do feel like a ceasefire is somewhere in the possible future. Whether peace is, I not that hopeful, but I really do hope that Putin realizes like Ukraine isn't giving up. Like it's not going to be an easy fight for him.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that the ceasefire is possible, and I'm hopeful for these talks, but I don't think by any means that a peace agreement or a truce, like a full-blown truce agreement, is in the works, at least for the time being.
That was another installment, I guess you could call it, of our breaking news segment, our follow-up to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. We hope that, as always, you were mildly interested. If you were, follow us on Spotify, subscribe to our YouTube channel, get updated by following us on Instagram and Twitter. You get to see our lovely faces. And also, just check out mildly-interesting.co.uk. Santos spent a lot of blood, sweat, and tears on it and has some good articles up on there. But without further ado, I've been Akash Lush.
And I was João Santos.
And this was Mildly Interesting.
Mildly interesting. No, seriously, just mildly interesting.